Welcome to Web3 and Me, presented by FLOLiO. On today's show, as you can see, Dan and I are joined by the one and only CEO of Pudgy Penguins, Luca Netz. We're going to be catching up on everything that's happened with the Pudgies over the last few months since he was on with us last. Before we get started, please like the stream, subscribe to our channel, and head to FLOLiO.com. Check out all of the awesome tools we have over there. Without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, Luca Netz. Luca, thanks again for being here with us, man. It's very excited to have you back.
No, thanks for embodying what it is to be a Pudgy Penguin.
Absolutely, man. I had to break out the Penguin onesie. It's still summer here in Colorado, but that's okay. We're going to roll with it. So the last time we had you on, it was back in May, first weekend of May. It was right before, the day before the yacht party you guys had. And, it was a great episode. You had all these great plans, and it's been really cool to watch them play out. I remember the next day, watching on Twitter, everyone just having a blast at that party, all the cool shit that you guys did for it. And then there's been a ton of announcements since. So let's just start with what all has changed over the last, 4 months since we had you on.
I think people think that when I say something, I'm just like when I say something, I'm doing it, right? I'm not here to mess around. And we didn't spend pretty much $3 million acquiring this project to just not be number one.
Yeah.
So I think, we had the unfortunate situation of the market just not being in our favor, right? I think right when we were speaking, things were just getting a little tough. So, being resilient and just huddling down and sticking true to our flippers was really important. We've been working, man. I have no other way to say it. We've just been really working, and it's really not my credit to take. It's I have an amazing group of people on this journey with me that have fully bought in and fully committed to this vision, and they believe. I believe, they believe, the community believes, and I think as of recently, you're just kind of seeing that belief, come to fruition, right? And don't get me wrong, we're at nowhere where we want to be. I think now is just the beginning. It feels good to have people acknowledge the hard work, because I would argue we're doing a lot more than most, and we probably have the minimum amount of funding more than others, but to us that doesn't really matter. We know how to build brands, and we don't need $50 million to do it, right? We've built companies like this one from nothing to something, you know what I mean? And so this is what we do. And I'm really excited that people are acknowledging us in some capacity. I think it's a really good feeling, but we can't let it get to our heads, and we just have to keep grinding and doing what we know is going to make us successful, which is a 5, 10, 15-year outlook, right? When you buy a project like this, it's not a 6-month thing, right? It's not an 18-month thing or a 24-month thing. I knew that when we did this, this would be what I'd be working on until my, mid to late 30s. This is my life now. These things.
So when you said you're not yet where you want to be, do you primarily mean your spot in this market?
Yeah, I mean, I want to be number one, So right now I'm not number one. I'm not, I'm not close to number one. So to me, it's fantastic. I'm super ecstatic for the holders, and I'm super ecstatic for just the community, because this little bit of life is good for them. They deserve it. This talk about a tight knit and resilient community. I mean, the Penguins are that. And so this moment in the sun feels good for them. And I'm super thankful that our hard work is giving them that type of fulfillment. But, for us, I didn't come in here and sacrifice everything in my life to just be a top 10 project. Or a top 5 project or a top 3 project, right?
When you say that, are you going off of floor price or reach? Because I would argue that once I saw the announcement about the coloring book, the toys and everything in the coming months, I think that's going to make you guys more recognizable than a lot of projects whose floors are much higher than yours. How are you evaluating that success?
And it's not a floor thing, right? I think it's really a social dominance thing. And I think from a social dominance thing, we're easily top 5. If you don't think we're top 5, top 6, I just don't think you're paying attention. The data would tell me that we're definitely a top 6 project. And so you're right. Some of this stuff is just going to take time. I think floor, isn't the all in be all. A lot of people are, flipping and have financial situations they have to deal with. So I can't really hone our success to the floor, right? That will come with success in terms of building a brand. But I think from our perspective, just like real brand awareness, right? Like there's some interesting data points that I'm, not going to share for the sake of just like a lot of people are starting to copy kind of what we're doing. But like we're getting the brand awareness out there. Like people are starting to realize that know nothing about NFTs, really what Pudgy Penguins are. And I think in 12 months we can get there. Like I think 12 months from now we'll have another interview and we'll be number one. I really believe that. And it's from a brand awareness perspective. From a floor perspective, I can't dictate, who quantifies a smart investment or not. But I would imagine that if I have the number one brand awareness, that somebody somewhere would warrant that, the floor should be X amount with Ethereum, which.
Yeah, I don't think people appreciate the value of a very like, not just family friendly, but just overall friendly brand like Pudgy Penguins are. Like kids' toys, kids' everything is just such a big market to try to be a part of that, like, not to knock any other projects, but these very niche ones that appeal to a very small like subset of people are not going to be able to grow to the same level that a family friendly, cute, recognizable brand like Pudgy Penguins will, in my opinion.
Exactly. Like, look at your suit right now.
Damn right. Let's talk about some of the stuff that has come out the last like month or so. We've seen the preview for the toy, which looks awesome. We've seen the Pudgy Penguins marketplace. We see the coloring book, the board of advisors. Like, what's the process been like?
And Soulbound Tokens. Don't sleep on that.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Soulbound Token. I missed that one. A lot has happened. Like, it's hard for me to keep up with everything you guys are doing. What are you most excited for amongst these things, and what do you think is going to surprise people, from all of that?
I think from a building brand awareness standpoint, I think the toys are best positioned for that. I always thought Pudgy Penguins would be a $1 billion toy, right? Like I don't know how much you guys know about the toy industry, but like Pepe the Pig, like $5 billion IP, it's a toy. You know what I mean? And so I think people are really just like underestimating the toy vertical, and it's something that I'm probably most passionate about. Like I had a stuffed animal up until I was 13, right? And I still do, like hanging around the house, but like. I think from a building that connection between you and your consumer and your brand loyalists, I think the toy is going to have a really interesting impact. Our children's book that we just announced, I think is also going to be super interesting from an educational standpoint, like really bringing the IP into the hands of, putting it in bookstores and working out deals with Scholastic. Like this stuff is like stuff that super excites me. Like I remember being a kid, like, when Scholastic Fair came around and like not being able to purchase a book and being like super pissed because like we were poor and we couldn't freaking buy a Scholastic book. Like what initiatives can I do there that would fulfill me beyond just the business? Like, giving kids books away to kids and like really just like being the leader and like what I think a Web3 brand should be. So I think all of the facets that you just mentioned, are key cogs in the machine. And they all will play a role in how they tie into each other, right? Like if you read the children's book and then you go and buy a toy, or you go and buy the toy and go to a children's book. I think one vertical we're really leaning into hard is just consumer product goods, because that's really what it is to be a brand. Everyone says they're a brand, but they don't have a stable consumer product good. Well, what brand are you? Oh, you're an NFT brand? Good luck, right? Because what's going to happen is Ethereum, right, is going to crash to $300 and then your brand is going to be worthless. And so that's the issue, right? Like there's too many variables in the Ethereum royalty game that a founder can't control, that you can't build your business off the back of, right? Like I can't build my business and I can't say NFTs are our core value product, right? Or our core value proposition, when there's too many variables that affect the NFT that I can't control, right? Like how can I determine the success of my NFT when half of it is determined by variables that I have no control over? Right. And so I think
seeing it today with like the X2Y2 saying that they're not going to enforce like creator royalties anymore. It's gonna be like a donation kind of thing. So like, it's a very good point that you make right there.
Right. Like, I think it's these things are IP. That's what they are. And how people are just like so negligent of that fact and are just like building SaaS tools and like all these things that just don't matter. Right. Like these things are brands first and foremost. And what does it mean to be a brand? Well, all the brands that I know of and all the brands that I've worked on have a stable consumer product good. That's the key. So that's what we'll do.
Yeah, and
Very
speaking
cool.
about COGS, I think it's really amazing that you tie together your secondary project along with the main project and still give them value through the licensing rewards. I think that's really cool.
Yep. Can't forget about the littles.
Not at all. So you announced this all-star team of advisors, like just a who's who of people who have a ton of experience. Like, what is their, to what you're willing to share, like, what is that interaction going to be like? How do you see them helping you build out the Pudgy brand?
So they've been an advisor since day one, right? So like that is anything new. I just decided to release that then because I thought it was good timing. I thought all eyes were on us, and I wanted people to know that we were serious. Like, I'm not building this just like, a kid with like a good, couple big success stories and, assembled some people together. Like, dude, this is like, I believe with every bone in my body, this is a multi-billion-dollar company, right? And like, I just was like, okay, look, we got eyes on us. Let's show the world that like, we're not just like doing this just to do it. Like, we're doing this to take the top spot, right? And like anything else is just redundant to me. Like, I have no interest in being number 2 or number 3. I've done that in the past, and like, I want to be number 1, right? So in that regard, like the advisory board is interesting in the sense that every company that I've been a part of has had an advisory board in some capacity. And I think advisors really just play a role in terms of like strengthening your weaknesses, right? So like, I'm very conscious of my ability. I'm very conscious of my strengths. I'm very conscious of who I am as a human being. And I am very conscious of our team and what our team strengths are. And I know what we're lacking. And I think the advisory board is just to put people in position to answer questions and help solve problems that we otherwise, would make mistakes doing ourselves. So like, to give you some context, me personally, I maybe lost 10, 15, $20 million building businesses over the last 5-6 years. And so my experience, right, if I were to coach somebody, starting a business, I would save them millions of dollars in mistakes and time and energy because of my experience, right? So there's certain verticals that certain people on that advisory board are going to help us save a ton of money in terms of steering us in the right direction, right? And like, we'll look at somebody like Chet, for example, or he's a chief people officer. Like, people just, overlook that stuff. What is it like to build a real company culture? Web3 is all about inclusivity and diversity and just making sure that like we're doing this the right way, right? Like, he's somebody that I'm leaning on a ton. Like, what are the right ways to deal with certain issues, right? He's advised people like Howard Schultz and, a bunch of just top entrepreneurs that have built the biggest businesses in the world, right? Like, he's been really helpful in terms of just guiding our direction and just making sure that we are building the appropriate company culture, that our employee handbooks are, at the top tier. And so I think just everybody on that board, helps solve, a potential problem. Even if it's not a problem now, I feel like, I know where this business is going to go 5-10 years from now. I know the vision, and I'm just trying to foreshadow some of those problems and some of those mistakes that I can make and put people in place to help, prevent those issues from happening.
So over the last few months, we've seen the market take like a pretty steep downturn for the most part, the Pudgies being one of the exceptions to that. What do you think has been, besides like some of the news, like what do you think has been the success of that, like led to that? And where do you feel the NFT market is going to be going in the next like 6 to 24 months?
Yeah, I think the NFT market will have another huge run. At the end of the day, this is the future of creator empowerment. It's the future of brand building. It's the right way to do all of these things, right? So we're not going anywhere. I think in the short term, like, penguins are resilient. Bear market, it doesn't matter to them. Like, they're going to hold tight and they're going to do their thing. And, for me, I came into August and I said, we're going to put our flag in the ground, right? Like, this was super important to us. And, based on that, I think, we've done what we set out to do, at least for this month.
Okay. Talk about those Soulbound tokens a little bit more. I missed out on mentioning that. Like, can you give us a little bit of insight on how, what that's going to entail for the Pudgies?
Yeah. So for us, like, I plan on building a brand with tens of millions of users, right? Like, that's where we're going to go 5-10 years from now. Like, it's going to be an abundance of people and interaction. And to me, I think it's really important that I never forget who was really a part of this since day one, right? And who was really participating. So for us, Soulbounds are given to different members of the community for different things, whether you participated in a licensing opportunity, whether you were a Pengu influencer, or whether you were a Penguin dev, or whether you were, somebody who held for the first year, right? And you got different metrics based on that. And to me, it's just a really interesting way so that once this company is where I know it's going to be, that we know who to, bring some of that love back to in terms of like who was really there since day one, who was really participating, who was really engaging, who is really leading the charge in terms of, really pushing this brand forward when no one else believed, right? And so quantitatively identifying your core user base is really the core purpose of these Soulbounds, and then making sure that when the time comes, there's certain benefits that they will get that others won't.
Yeah, so the
I think
token
that's
itself
really cool.
is not able for sale, right? Because it's soulbound.
Yeah, so you can't buy it, you can't sell it, you can't trade it. It's stuck to your wallet, baby.
There you go.
That's
So-
really awesome.
Yeah, for sure. So one question that I had was, because you were talking about essentially pitfalls for a project, right? So I was wondering, what do you think is the number one pitfall for a current project that has like a large community, right? Like, what do you think is the number one pitfall for them?
A second mint, a third mint, it seems so obvious, but I know why it's happening, because at the end of the day, they're interested in making millions of dollars because they've never made millions of dollars before.
Mhm.
And for them, they want to extract as much value out of it to them because, this type of money is unique to them. And, they're not interested in building billion-dollar companies. They're interested in making an extra 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 million dollars. But like anybody who's a founder in this space knows exactly what another mint is going to do to your floor price if you don't time it exceptionally right. You have to hit a certain threshold to start minting more stuff, right? And that threshold is at a minimum double-digit ETH floor, as well as like a couple other variables that I don't want to dive into. But at a minimum, you got to be at a double-digit ETH floor. If not, you're just minting to mint and to extract value, and subsequently, you don't really care about your core audience base. You really just care about making tens of millions of dollars, and that's, I guess depends on who you talk to, but that's what they care about.
So on that note, you'd mentioned wanting to expand this out to millions of people. How do you see the Pudgies getting, besides the consumer side, like buying toys, buying, everything else, how do you see millions of people getting involved in the Pudgy community without diluting, the supply of NFTs?
It's an interesting question. I think, there's plenty of communities out there that I think the holders chat will always be the holders chat. The Penguinaires chat will always be the Penguinaires chat. But, at the end of the day, you can still have people a part of your community that are just interested in your consumer product goods. I think you'll look at, I think Hello Kitty is a perfect example of a cult community. You don't need to be, an NFT holder to have that. And at the end of the day, I think that just drives the value back to the NFTs. I mean, when you think about it, if we could really build, a $500 million a year business around this IP, right? And licensing that opportunity and bringing that money back to the holders. And this business is really a conglomerate, like some of these other IP brands. Dude, talk about what that collection's intrinsic value will really be worth. That will be, not only will that be one of the greatest Web3 stories ever told, right? But I think it would really be it's the first iteration of one of the biggest brands, to ever emerge, not only out of Web3, but out of Web2 as well. And those 8,888 are it. I think there's very few, stories that can be told that have that type of upside potential.
Yeah,
Absolutely. So we saw that monster Pudgy sale the other day. It was the talk of the NFT space, dropping 400 ETH on a Pudgy. Did you know that was going down? Was there, when a big sale like that happens, does word get back to you, or did that just kind of come out of the blue and you're just holy shit, someone just dropped over $500,000 on a Pudgy?
No, I know Dreezus. So Dreezus came to our NFT NYC event. I was wearing these shoes called Red Octobers, which are some really rare sneakers. He was a sneakerhead. Yeah. And he told me, he's I'm going to make this move on this. He it's been a while. He's been planning on it. He's been bidding on it for a couple of weeks, right? And then he decided to outright buy it, and he did.
That's awesome. That's really cool. I think it was ridiculous seeing people hating on that. It's the guy wanted the Pudgy. He saw value in it. I don't think anyone, the people who are giving him shit are never going to be the people in a position to spend that kind of money anyways, because instead of trying to learn from it and understand what they're not seeing, they're just hating on him. So I think that's really cool that he has that level of conviction, in what you guys are doing.
I completely agree.
Yeah, and it's essentially the same as if SpongeBob had an NFT collection, it's essentially the same as buying the SpongeBob NFT, right? It is the Pudgy Penguin, is it not?
Yep.
It's the pudgiest of Pudgies, man.
The pudgiest of the Pudgy Penguins.
So you've gotten so much done in the last few months. I think a lot of people struggle in NFTs with just being productive. This is kind of not NFT talk. How do you manage all of this? How are you able to get so much shit done in this, last 4 months.
I think it seems like a lot to the outside. And the reason why I think it seems like a lot is because the bar is so low.
Yeah.
Right? Like a bunch of projects are doing a whole bunch of nothing. To us, we think we're not doing enough. Right? And like, we're working super hard. Don't get me wrong, but we could be we're diving deeper. We're going harder. Right? And so for us, like, it just goes back to the team. Like, I am so thankful for every single person on this team because each and every one of them is a superstar. And on a C-level basis, like, there isn't a C-level person on our team that can be the CEO of this project, truthfully. Like, it's a C-level team that every single one of those guys and gals could literally be the CEO of this project. And I think that's really important, right? Like, we are pushing the boundary and we're doing a great job, don't get me wrong. But I think like why people are so amazed with the output is because like nobody else is doing anything. And I'm just like thinking to myself, I'm even thinking to myself, like, some of these guys have 10, 15, 20, 30, 40, 50, $100 million in the treasury. And I'm just seeing no output. And I'm scratching my head and wondering, like, what are you really doing? Right? Like, there's like you're shipping half-ass products, right? And you're like barely communicating and you're barely interacting, but you're loaded, And like, we're bootstrapped over here at Penguins, you know what I mean? Like, we're getting down and dirty. We rolled up our sleeves. I told them when we first started, like, we're just gonna have to outwork everyone. And it seems like up until this point we're doing it, and it's just mind-boggling how some certain projects that just have so much money and so much capital and they just aren't moving the needle. Like, I have no interest in being number one 5 years from now. I want to be number one 12 months from now. Like, where's the tenacity? Where's the competitiveness? I'm just like looking across and I'm like, there's only like 2 guys I really feel like I'm competing with. The rest of you guys are just like, give me a bull market and I'll completely flip you, Like, it's pretty incredible, actually. It's fascinating that people have so much money and they just don't know what to do with it.
It's true. Like you mentioned the communication part. It's tough for a lot of projects to communicate when they don't really have a clear vision of where they're going. And I think that's where, sets you guys apart. When we look at, the involvement of your advisory board and the, combination of Web 2 and Web 3, do you feel that projects require help from, Web 2 people that have created something, great like that before them? I know that there's like people for a while were like, oh, we don't want VC money in Web 3. Now we're seeing that if projects don't get VC money, they may not survive this bear market. How do you think that the Web 2 and Web 3 can really come together to make this work?
People have totally misinterpreted what it is to have a Web 3 business. A Web 3 business is the exact same thing as having a Web 2 business. There's just one key. There's a couple variables that are differentiating, but the most important one is community and building with your community, right? I think that's like the thing. In a Web 2 business, I talk to my team, we move, we execute, we pivot, right? In a Web 3 business, you talk to your community, you move, you execute, you pivot. The only difference, right? And you're building it together and you have to share the value, right? So a Web 2 business, all the money comes to you and you're just hoarding money like a greedy pig. In a Web 3 business, you share the money, right? In some capacity within reason, right? At the end of the day, like, the core team still has costs. We're still trying to build a big business, a profitable business. But if I make $100 million a year in direct-to-consumer product goods, right, and I'm in retailers and our toys are flying off the shelves, there's no reason that our holders aren't making some of that money in some capacity through a licensing agreement, right, through negotiating some sort of licensing deal. And so I think that's like kind of the key. Like, that's how you build the brand. Like, yeah, like, okay, I can make a toy, but I shouldn't go make a bunch of new penguins to go make that toy. Like, the penguins exist. Let me pull it from the community. Let's work out and negotiate a deal with them. And let's move forward, right? And let's just keep the train moving. But I think, a lot of people are just misinterpreting what it is to run a Web 2 and a Web 3 business. I think there's definitely a lot more variables at play. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, there's a level of transparency. There's a level of, the fragility of making mistakes is a lot more sensitive in a Web 3 business. Don't get me wrong. There's a lot of different variables. But when you're looking at it from its core, from its foundational standpoint, it's the same business, right? Build, scale, create brand awareness, build revenue streams, right? There's really no difference, though I would argue, Web3 is a lot harder for the things that I mentioned in terms of like the visibility, the ability to pivot, the transparency, the inability to make mistakes, right? Mistakes can be fatal here, like they can literally KO you, right? So It's an interesting business in that regard, but from its foundational purpose, they're very similar.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you could have essentially made a similar business in Web 2 and still made it into a multi-million-dollar company. Why did you end up going for Web 3?
Because I think for me, making sure that Web3 wins is important, right? Like I really believe Pudgy Penguins can be the Trojan horse for Web3.
Yeah.
I think Web3 right now is super taboo. It's intimidating. There's no better way to bring people onto the space than with a Pudgy Penguin. And I think that is really my primary motivation. At the end of the day, like I found early on that making money was not what fulfilled me. Like helping change the world fulfilled me, right? So if I can do the both, right? If I can make, a really huge business that makes a ton of money while also changing the world and impacting the world in a positive way, that's my dream. And to be honest, I think this is the first time where I've actually been in my dream job. This is actually kind of my dream job. So like I'm super stoked in that regard, where it's like, if I succeed, not only can we make a ton of money doing it, but we can change the world, right? Because if I bring Web3 to the masses, or at least I play my role, right? That's going to help tens, if not hundreds of thousands of creators, you know what I mean? Finally make money on their art, on their ability, right? And I think this is really important.
Yeah,
so
I think
on the subject, sorry, Dan, go ahead.
Okay. What I was going to say is that if this was the first time us talking, I'd be like, this guy is maybe a little bit too ambitious, right? But because I know what you've done, I'm like, yeah, this guy is gonna do it, right? Like if you said you were gonna run for president, like I would definitely vote for you.
Thank you.
Dan would move to the States and then vote for you. I don't want to take up too much more of your time. A couple more questions on the Trojan horse, bringing it to the masses. Is there any particular company, whether it's Web 2, Web 3, whatever, that you would love to collaborate with that you could bring the most attention to Pudgy Penguins? And if there's something already in the works, I understand you can't tell us, but like what's your dream partnership or collaboration if you have one?
Wow, that's a great question, and I should honestly have the answer to that on top of my head. I think actually one that makes a lot of sense is actually Apple, because I think it embodies the Web3 ethos, and I think there's very few brands that Apple could actually collaborate with in this space. I think would probably be the only one, in my opinion. I think actually Doodles would have a really good edge there too. Because like Apple's very abstract and they're all about the performing arts, and I think Doodles really taps into that nerve really well. That would be at a glance. I think there's a better answer somewhere, but I'm already kind of doing some of the verticals that I wanted to be in. I think I'll think about that and maybe get you a better answer. I think there's maybe Haagen-Dazs. I would love to do a Haagen-Dazs collab. I'd love to do a Baskin-Robbins collab. I'd love to be in the ice cream. I think there's an opportunity in the ice cream. Sure.
There's got to be a great Ben and Jerry's flavor in there somewhere, I'm sure.
Yeah, there's got to be. So like that like when you're just thinking like high level at a glance, I think Apple is a good one. I think more realistic is like a Haagen-Dazs or some sort of people are underestimating the food and the beverage, right? Like I want to get there. I want to be a consumable product, right? I want you to be able to consume a Pudgy Penguin. How cool would that be?
I think Pudgies would look really cool. I'm a snowboarder. I'm like snowboard gear or ski gear or something
that's
as well.
Easy,
like
that that's already in the
well, just because it's easy doesn't mean it's bad.
No, don't get me wrong. I agree.
So here we go. The YouTube Pengu. I love that idea. We
Pengu.
did have a question in the comments, and this was around, when you bought the project earlier in the year, what was it that made you pull the trigger on dropping, 750 ETH into acquiring the Pudgy Penguins from the previous team? If you can just sum it up, high level.
Dude, I just I knew this was a once in a lifetime opportunity, and it was a steal. Like people think there were higher bids in my offer because Cole liked me more, right? But like, dude, 750 ETH was like a steal for this type of IP. There's people just don't see the vision at the time, like if you know brands and you know brand building and like you actually like are a marketer and you get like the conversation that I like to have, like you'll agree. Like out of this space, like when you think about it, like we did a focus group. If you put like a penguin next to, all the other major IPs in the space, like 8 out of 10 times a child is going to pick the penguin. Like we have such an edge for mass market. Like who else has an IP that is so kid friendly, that is so PG, that is so easily recognizable, that it resonates with people so well that you can identify the second you see it, right? Like who else has an IP like that in our space? Now, don't get me wrong. There's other PG IPs. There's other really inclusive and diverse IPs, but they're all like leaning into like certain niches. Like they're not super broad. Like there isn't anywhere these penguins can't go. Like they can go anywhere, right? Like there literally is not a single place in the world that a Pudgy Penguin can't go. And I think that's the beauty of it. And for me, from a deal maker perspective, from a brand builder perspective, I was like, you know, all these other IPs, no matter what they are, like there's certain deals they cannot do, right? You can't say that about the Penguins.
That's very true. I can't wait to buy my son a Pudgy Penguin stuffed animal when those hit the shelves in the very near future. So let's wrap it up. What are you willing to share with us that is like the next big thing that you guys are working on? Like
nothing.
Nothing. I knew that was going to be the answer, but I had to ask anyways. I am excited to see, you know, who this mystery board member is whenever the time is right for you to announce that.
It's me.
Mystery board member. Oh my god.
Well, you blur it out and you say like surprise superstar or whatever, and of course people want to know who it is. Like it's you're good at you know, getting people on and seeing, you know, what's going to happen there. So I think that's a really good place to end it for today. I think that was an awesome episode. A lot of great insight there, Luca. Very, very cool to see everything that's happened in the last few months. I can't wait till we can do this again, you know, another few months down the road and see where the Pudgies are at. Dan, any final questions, thoughts, concerns?
I'd say thanks for everyone watching. Thanks for all the comments. Thanks to you as well, Luca. It's always amazing to talk to you. And you're such a smart individual. Like every time we talk, it really does amaze me. So love it.
Luca, any final words for the people?
No, I thank you everyone for tuning in. Thank you for your time. And, you know, hopefully we'll do another one in 6 months and the penguins will be even further in the sky. You know, penguins don't fly, but these ones do, baby. So you guys have a great day. You guys be well. I got to hop off. I got a meeting. I'm 6 minutes late too. So you guys be well.
Appreciate it, Luca. Have a great day, buddy.
Bye.
All right, everyone.
Take care.
Thank you so much for watching today. Just a reminder, please hit that like button, subscribe to the FLOLiO YouTube channel, and head over to FLOLiO.com. Check out all the free tools we have. We really appreciate everyone using them. Absolutely awesome episode with Luca. I hope everyone has a great weekend. For Dan, for the rest of the team at FLOLiO, I am JWeb. Yes, I wore a penguin suit today because that's how much I love you guys. We will see you next time.
Bye-bye.